Yo, it's been a minute since I posted anything on here, man. I just had a lot of stuff I was doing and stuff like that. In this video, I want to just share some stuff that I've been thinking about recently. It can be kind of difficult trying to learn art. Since it's so open, there's no one set approach to doing things, which I feel is a good and a bad thing. It can make things a lot more fun, but it can also make things more difficult because you might lack direction. Recently, I found for myself a process that I find really useful for learning, and I just wanted to share that. But I hope that anybody who watches this video who's been struggling with, finding a good process for learning, I hope that it can be helpful. You can kind of streamline your studies to learn in an efficient way that's also fun at the same time. So yeah, let's just get straight to it.
Part 1 Evaluation.
So the first thing that I do is deciding what it actually is that I need to learn. Basically, it's just evaluating your skills and your art to figure out what your biggest weakness is at the time. It doesn't even have to be your biggest weakness, because if you're just starting out in art, probably everything is a weakness, right? So it doesn't even have to be your biggest weakness. You can choose what you want to study just for what you're interested in. But in this case, I'm just going to talk about how I kind of approach things, which is I try to look at my weaknesses. So yeah, you can evaluate these things by yourself. The way I like to do it is by looking at artists that inspire me and then comparing my own work to that. And I'll ask questions like, what's in their work that isn't in mine? Or what do they do well that I've not managed to do well? Maybe they'll have more interesting shapes, or like better uses of line weight, or more interesting poses, or it could just be anything. Identifying the differences is going to tell me what things I want to work on improving. Another way of recognizing your weaknesses is to just ask for feedback from people who are more experienced and more skilled, if that's something that you have access to. Obviously, not everybody can just easily contact somebody who's really good at art, but if you can, it's good to make use of that resource. But yeah, it can be super useful to have somebody else who's good to look at your work and give you feedback, because sometimes your own lack of knowledge and experience can stop you from actually being able to see what your own weaknesses are. I'm sure that everybody's had a feeling at some time that something's off with the work, but you're just not sure exactly what it is. And that's what feedback from people who are more experienced is really, really useful for.
Part 2 Fundamentals.
So after I've decided what it is that I actually want to improve on, I'll probably have a long list of things I want to improve. But if you have a long list, I recommend just taking it on one at a time, because it can be pretty overwhelming if you're trying to improve everything at once. I remember when I was speaking to one of my friends before, I used the analogy of eating a meal, right? If you have a big 3-course meal in front of you, you're not going to try to eat everything at once. You just take it one bite at a time. And that's kind of what it's like with trying to learn things. You don't want to try to learn every single thing at once. You have to just take it one at a time, otherwise you're just gonna suffer basically and you'll just be overwhelmed. So the first step to tackling the thing that you've decided on working on is understanding how it actually works. So for example, if the weakness that I noticed is that my values are off and stuff, I would want to understand how values actually work. And for the rest of the video, I'm actually going to continue with the values example just to keep things simple. But keep in mind, it can be applied to pretty much anything in art, more or less. So this stage of the process just involves a lot of research and fundamental exercises to understand the actual concept. The fundamental exercise is an important part because just binge watching a bunch of YouTube videos about a subject isn't really enough to learn, just by itself. A lot of learning also comes from just doing practice. Most resources out there are going to suggest exercises and stuff, but even the ones that don't explicitly say do this can also be good sources of exercises, because you can just copy the examples that they give. So a book might show an example of lighting on a sphere when it's trying to explain values to you. You can use that as an exercise by just replicating the example and then testing out whether or not you've actually understood the concept by lighting it from different angles, doing hard light or soft light, stuff like that. There's so many different resources out there for learning the fundamentals of art, and I'll link some of the ones that I like for different topics in the description. But I actually encourage that you go out and look for ones that explain things in a way that you can understand well, because there's some resources that I like that other people might not like, and obviously vice versa. Also, when we're trying to understand a new concept, it's useful to study it in isolation at first. Like making it as simple as possible can really help with preventing getting overwhelmed. Like with the example we're going with, if you've never studied values before, it's going to be much easier to start with doing value studies of simple objects and like primitive forms instead of trying to like, you know, paint the whole figure or paint a landscape with in a value study, because you just don't understand it yet. You just need to, you know, simplify it down so that you can get the actual concept before trying to expand it to other things. So you just want to basically download the knowledge into your brain through, you know, just reading about it, watching videos about it, and practicing the exercises until you can more or less just understand what's actually going on.
Part 3. Artist Studies.
So you might have been in a similar situation to me, where I used to think like, oh, I've grinded these fundamentals so much, but I just still feel that my art isn't improving as much as it should. And it's only recently that I actually understood that the application of the fundamentals is just as important as like the understanding part. A basketball player, right, might research all the different ways of shooting the ball. Like they might research all the correct techniques and the scientific, like how much arc you need and the position for your arms and stuff like that. And they might grind that out in the gym in isolation, just throwing up free throws. But then when they're in the actual game, they just end up shooting from terrible positions on the court, and they're always contested or off balance and stuff like that. That person is also probably going to be thinking like, oh, I practiced so much to understand, like, you know, how to shoot the ball, but I still can't hit shots, and they're going to be frustrated. But that's because they haven't learned how to actually apply the knowledge that they have and the mechanical skill that they have into the actual game itself. And that's because the game of basketball is about more than just the mechanical action of shooting the ball. Like there's so much more to it. And in the same way, art is about more than just, you know, the fundamentals in isolation. It's about putting everything together, you know, to make something that you want to make. So we can get around that by replicating other artists. So we might have studied how values work and how to apply that knowledge into the simple exercises. But we need to know how to apply the actual knowledge to art that we want to make. And we can do it through learning how other artists apply their knowledge to their work. So now we can go back to the artists that we were comparing our work with at the start and try to copy how they use the skills that we've been studying to make their work more appealing. And recently I've been having a lot of fun doing this, where you can just find artists that you like and just copy how they apply the fundamentals into their work. And that way you can actually start to see like the fruits of your labor from grinding all the fundamentals.
Part 4. Application.
Why can't you have the guts to tell me about these things so I don't have to drag it out of Botan? Party pooper.
Yeah, so it's very easy to get caught up in just banging out studies 24/7. But we also need to remember like why you're actually doing the studies in the first place. I think that something I found recently is that being creative and making the art that you actually want to make is an important part of improving as well. Making the art that you actually want to make is the place where you can apply all the things that you've been studying and working on. And also, it's just fun to make stuff. Even if it's not at the technical skill level that you want it to be at, like, that shouldn't stop you from just having fun with art and making things that you want to make. Having fun with art is an important part of improving, because it's what's going to keep you motivated to keep learning and just keep going. So yeah, that's the final part, is even though it's probably kind of cliche, it's just to actually have fun with it. Because maybe you actually do like just doing studies, because there's definitely people like that. And if that's what you like, just do that. But just as long as you're doing the things that you want to do and applying the studies to what you actually want to make, that's really the final part of the process, I think. So just to conclude everything, I think you can put it into a list of just evaluation, fundamentals, application, and then just creating shit. I hope that breakdown of the process that I've kind of come up with has been useful. Those last 2 steps is what I've really added in there recently, which has helped me with making more actually appealing art instead of just banging out fundamentals every single day, which is very important, but you know, everything's just important as each other. Like you can't really miss any part out of that, I feel like. But yeah, I hope that that's useful for somebody. And yeah, man, just keep having fun with art, keep learning, keep improving. Thank you for watching, and if you're this far in the vid, Oh, yeah. I don't really know. If you got to the end of it, comment your favorite artist or somebody that you're gonna do studies from, or you want to do studies from, or somebody you've been doing studies from. But yeah. Alright, in a bit.